The morning mist clung to the cemetery like a shroud, damp and heavy, as Maria Reyes stood over the fresh mound of earth that held what the military claimed was her daughter. The funeral had been a blur of stiff uniforms, salutes, and hollow condolences. Captain Sofia Reyes, her bright-eyed, fearless girl, had died on a classified mission overseas, they said. A hero's sacrifice, the officer had murmured, avoiding her eyes. But the casket had remained sealed. Too damaged, they insisted. Better to remember her as she was. Maria had nodded numbly, clutching the folded flag they'd handed her. But the questions had already begun to fester. Why had there been no personal effects? No dog tags, no pocket watch Sophia always carried, the one engraved with "For my warrior," Maria's own gift to her on the day she enlisted. The military's explanations were vague, scripted, as if rehearsed. And then there were the dreams. Sophia standing at the foot of her bed, her uniform torn, mouth moving soundlessly, eyes wide with urgency. Every night the same vision, leaving. Maria gasping awake, her pillow damp with sweat. Just grief, her sister had soothed, but Maria's hands wouldn't stop trembling. 3 days after the funeral, she found herself kneeling in the cemetery at dawn, fingers brushing the cold soil. "It's not her," she whispered, the certainty like a knife in her ribs. Her old friend Javier, a retired medic with shadows of his own, had tried to talk her out of it. "This is madness, Maria." But the desperation in her voice had worn him down. Now, under the pitiless afternoon sun, they worked in silence, shovels biting into the earth, the rhythmic thud of dirt hitting the pile punctuating the air. Maria's muscles burned, but she barely noticed. All she could think of was the moment she'd see Sophia's face again, even if it was just to say goodbye properly. When the shovel finally struck wood, Javier froze. Maria didn't. She clawed at the remaining dirt with bare hands, nails splitting, until the coffin's lid emerged, sleek and government-issued. Her breath came in ragged bursts as Javier pried it open with a crowbar. The hinges groaned. The inside smelled of antiseptic and something faintly metallic. And then, Maria's scream shattered the stillness. The body inside was a stranger. A young man, pale and hollow-cheeked, dressed in a soldier's uniform that didn't fit right. No Sophia. No explanation. Just a lie, rotting in a box meant for her daughter. Javier staggered back, crossing himself, but Maria's tears had dried into something harder. She reached into the coffin, her fingers brushing the dead man's collar, and froze. Stitched into the fabric was a tiny, frayed patch she recognized. Sophia's unit. This wasn't a mistake. Maria's hands trembled as she traced the frayed edges of the patch, her mind racing through a storm of possibilities. Had Sophia been here? Was this man connected to her? Or was this some cruel trick to bury the truth along with an unnamed soldier? The weight of the discovery pressed down on her chest, making it hard to breathe. Javier muttered curses under his breath, his face ashen, but Maria's grief had already hardened into something fiercer, something raw and unyielding. She couldn't look away from the stranger's face. The way his sunken cheeks seemed almost peaceful, as if he had accepted his fate long before they'd ever laid him in this grave. But Sophia would never have gone quietly. She would have fought. She would have left a sign. Maria's thoughts spiraled, clinging to the fragments of her daughter's life. The last video call, cut short when Sophia's commanding officer had barked something in the background. The final letter, its words oddly formal, as if someone else had dictated them. None of it made sense, and now, standing over this wrong body, Maria knew the military hadn't just made a mistake. They had lied. Deliberately. Coldly. Javier grabbed her arm, his voice urgent. "We need to go, Maria. Now. If anyone finds us here—" But she yanked free, her voice a whisper edged with steel. "No, not until I understand." She reached into the coffin again, this time slipping her hand beneath the man's stiffened shoulders, her fingers brushing against something solid tucked beneath his body. A small, metallic object. She pulled it free, her breath catching. A dog tag, but not Sophia's. The name was scratched out, the numbers nearly worn away except for a single, faintly visible series of digits at the bottom. Coordinates? A code? Her pulse pounded in her ears. This wasn't just a cover-up. It was a trail. And if the military had gone to such lengths to hide the truth, it meant Sophia, or what had happened to her, was far more dangerous than Maria could have imagined. The wind howled through the trees, carrying the scent of rain, as if the sky itself warned her to turn back. But Maria clenched the dog tag in her fist, her resolve hardening. She would dig deeper, no matter the cost, even if it led her into the heart of a darkness she couldn't yet see. Maria clutched the dog tag like a sacred relic, its cold metal biting into her palm as she and Javier hastily reburied the stranger's coffin, their movements frantic yet precise, every shovelful of dirt a silent pact to keep their discovery hidden. The weight of what they had done pressed on them like a physical force, the air thick with the scent of upturned earth and the unspoken fear that they were being watched. As they smoothed the grave back into its undisturbed state, Maria's mind raced with the implications of the coordinates etched into the tag. Were they a clue to Sophia's whereabouts? A trap laid by whoever had orchestrated this deception? Or worse, a warning meant to deter anyone from digging deeper? Javier wiped sweat from his brow, his voice low and strained. Maria, this is bigger than us. If they find out what we've done. His words trailed off, but the fear in his eyes was unmistakable. She knew he was right. The military had gone to great lengths to stage Sophia's death, and they wouldn't hesitate to silence anyone who threatened to expose their lies. Yet the thought of walking away now was unthinkable. Sophia had always been fearless, even as a child, climbing trees too high, charging into fights too big, enlisting despite Maria's tearful protests. If there was even a sliver of a chance her daughter was still alive, Maria would tear the world apart to find her. That night, under the dim glow of a single desk lamp, she spread out a map, her trembling fingers tracing the numbers from the dog tag to a remote region near the border, a place marked by dense forests and abandoned outposts, a no-man's land, where secrets could easily vanish. The dreams returned with a vengeance, Sophia's ghostly figure now more vivid, her lips forming words Maria couldn't hear, her hands reaching out as if to pull her mother into the darkness with her. Maria woke with a start, her sheets drenched in sweat, the echo of Sophia's voice lingering in her ears like a half-remembered scream. Dawn was still hours away, but sleep was impossible now. She dressed in silence, packed a bag with supplies, ADCIE, flashlight, a knife, the dog tag hidden in a pouch around her neck, and left a note for Javier, knowing he would try to stop her. The drive to the coordinates was a blur of winding roads and shadowed landscapes, the rising sun painting the horizon in hues of blood and gold. As she neared the location, the road dissolved into little more than a dirt path, the trees closing in around her like sentinels guarding a forbidden truth. Then, through the foliage, she spotted it, a derelict bunker, its concrete walls cracked and weathered, the iron door slightly ajar. Her breath hitched. This was the place. The answers, and perhaps Sophia, were inside. But as she stepped out of the car, the crunch of gravel beneath her boots, a distant sound froze her in place, the unmistakable click of a gun's safety being released. Maria froze, her breath trapped in her throat like a trapped bird, her body rigid as the sound of the gun's safety echoed ominously in the dense silence of the forest. The air itself seemed to thicken, every rustle of leaves and distant call of a crow magnified in her ears as she slowly raised her hands, her fingers trembling not from fear, though it clawed at her ribs, but from the sheer, desperate need to know what lay beyond that bunker door. Was it an enemy? A soldier left, behind to guard the truth, Or worse, someone who had been expecting her. The seconds stretched into eternity before a low, gravelly voice cut through the tension, speaking in a language she didn't recognize, the words sharp and commanding. Then a second voice, softer, familiar, responded, and Maria's heart lurched violently in her chest. It couldn't be. It was impossible. It was. And yet, when the figure stepped out from behind the trees, the dim morning light catching the sharp angles of her face, Maria's knees nearly gave way. Sophia! Alive! But not as Maria remembered her. Her daughter's once vibrant eyes were hollow, shadowed by bruises and something darker, something hunted. Her uniform was torn, her sleeves rolled up to reveal fresh scars snaking up her forearms, marks that spoke of pain, of captivity. For a heartbeat, neither moved, the world narrowing to just the two of them, mother and daughter, separated by lies and now reunited in a moment so fragile Maria feared breathing might shatter it. Then Sophia's gaze flickered to the side, her body tensing as she hissed, "Run!" The gunshot cracked through the air before Maria could react, the bullet embedding itself in the tree beside her head, splinters spraying her cheek. Chaos erupted. Shouts, the pounding of boots, Sophia lunging forward to shove Maria behind the cover of the bunker wall as more shots rang out. "They've been tracking you since the cemetery," Sophia gasped, her voice raw, her hands gripping. Maria's shoulders with a strength that bordered on painful. "You shouldn't have come." Maria's mind reeled, questions burning her tongue, but there was no time. The voices were closing in, the metallic tang of blood and gunpowder thick in the air. Sophia yanked her toward the bunker's half-open door, her movements frantic. "Listen to me," she whispered, her breath hot against Maria's ear. "What they're hiding in there, it's not just me, it's a weapon, and if they realize you know, they'll kill us both." The words sent a chill down Maria's spine, but before she could respond, a shadow fell across them. A man stood in the doorway, his face obscured by the glare of the rising sun at his back, the barrel of his rifle trained squarely on Sophia's chest. "Enough," he said, his voice eerily calm. "You've led us on quite the chase, Captain Reyes. But this ends now." Sophia's grip on Maria tightened, her body shielding her mother's as she spat, "You'll have to shoot me again." The man chuckled, low and humorless. "Oh, we've learned our lesson. This time, we'll shoot her first." Maria's world narrowed to the cold glint of the rifle's barrel. Her body pressed against Sophia's as if she could somehow absorb her daughter back into herself, reversing the years of separation and pain in this single, desperate moment. The man in the doorway took a step forward, his face finally emerging from the shadows. Sharp features, a jagged scar running from temple to jaw, eyes that held no mercy, only the clinical detachment of a soldier following orders. Sophia's breath came in shallow gasps, her muscles coiled like a spring. But Maria saw the flicker of resignation in her eyes, the silent apology that passed between them before Sophia suddenly lunged, her body slamming into the man with a force that sent them both crashing to the ground. The rifle skidded across the concrete floor, and Maria didn't think. She moved, her fingers closing around the cold metal just as another gunshot exploded from somewhere behind her, the bullet ricocheting off the bunker wall with a deafening ping. The world dissolved into a nightmare of shouting, scrambling limbs, and the metallic taste of fear as Sophia wrestled the man for control, her teeth bared in a snarl, her fists bloody. Maria raised the rifle with shaking hands, but the figures, blurred together, friend, foe, she couldn't tell. Then a guttural cry. The man staggered back, clutching his side where Sophia had driven a knife deep, his face contorted in pain and fury. "Go!" Sophia screamed, shoving Maria toward the bunker's dark interior. "Down the stairs! Now!" Maria hesitated, her mother's instinct screaming at her not to leave her daughter, but the sound of more boots pounding toward them shattered the moment. She turned and ran, the rifle heavy in her hands, her pulse roaring in her ears as she descended the narrow, rusted staircase. Into the bowels of the bunker. The air grew colder, thicker, the walls slick with condensation and something else, a coppery scent that made her stomach lurch. Blood. Old and new. The dim emergency lights flickered overhead, casting long, skeletal shadows that seemed to reach for her as she stumbled forward, her breath coming in ragged gasps. Then she saw it. At the end of the corridor, a reinforced steel door stood slightly ajar, a pale, flickering light seeping through the gap. The weapon Sophia had mentioned. Maria's steps slowed, dread pooling in her gut as she pushed the door open, and froze. The room was lined with monitors, maps, and files strewn across tables, but it was the center of the space that held her transfixed. A glass containment unit, cracked and leaking a viscous, dark fluid. Inside, a figure floated, suspended in the murky liquid. A woman. No, not a woman. Something else. Her skin was too pale, veins blackened and raised like cracks in porcelain, her fingers ending in elongated, claw-like nails, and her eyes, open, staring directly at Maria. Alive. A choked sound escaped Maria's throat as she stumbled back, the rifle slipping from her grasp. This wasn't a weapon, it was a person, or what had once been a person. The monitors suddenly flickered to life, displaying a looping video feed. Sophia, in a lab coat, injecting something into a soldier's arm. The man convulsing, screaming, his skin splitting as something dark and writhing emerged beneath. Maria's hands flew to her mouth. Sophia's voice, recorded, calm and clinical, filled the room. Subject 347 has shown a 98% compatibility rate. The transformation is irreversible. Proceeding to Phase 2. The screen changed. A document, a list of names. At the top, circled in, red, Captain Sophia Reyes. Recommended for termination. Maria's legs gave out. The truth wasn't that her daughter had been kidnapped, or that she was hiding. Sophia had been part of this, willingly. And whatever they had turned her into, whatever she had helped create, was now loose. Behind her, the steel door creaked. A familiar voice, soft and broken, whispered, "Mama, I'm so sorry." Maria turned. Sophia stood in the doorway, her eyes no longer hollow. They glowed, a faint, unnatural gold, and her smile was all teeth. Maria's entire body went numb as she stared into her daughter's glowing eyes, those golden, inhuman eyes that held none of Sophia's warmth, only a terrifying, alien intensity. The air between them crackled with something electric, wrong, as Sophia took a slow step forward, her movements too fluid, too precise, like a predator savoring the moment before the kill. Behind her, the wounded man from upstairs groaned, dragging himself into view, his face twisted in pain and disbelief as he muttered, "She wasn't supposed to wake up yet. The serum wasn't ready," before Sophia's head snapped toward him with a speed that defied nature, her lips peeling back in a snarl that revealed rows of needle-sharp teeth. Maria's breath caught in her throat. This wasn't just some experiment gone wrong. This was something far worse. The creature in the tank, the files, the video, they hadn't been trying to create a weapon. They'd been trying to control one. And they'd failed. Sophia, or what was left of her, turned back to Maria, her voice a grotesque mimicry of her daughter's, layered with something guttural, ancient. "You shouldn't have come here, Mama," she whispered, the words slithering into Maria's ears like poison. "But now that you have, you'll finally understand." She extended a hand, her fingers elongating, the nails blackening into claws, and Maria recoiled, her back hitting the cold glass of the containment unit. The thing inside stirred, its own eyes flying open, its mouth stretching into a silent scream as it pounded against the glass with fists that left cracks in their wake. The monitors exploded in a shower of sparks, plunging the room into near darkness. the only light now coming from Sophia's glowing eyes and the emergency strips along the floor, casting everything in a hellish red glow. Maria's mind raced. Fragments of the truth slotting into place. Sophia's strange letters, the military secrecy, the missing dog tags. Her daughter hadn't just been part of this. She'd been patient zero, the first successful hybrid, the first to survive whatever they'd injected into her. And now, whatever humanity remained was fighting a losing battle against the thing they'd turned her into. The wounded soldier let out a choked cry as Sophia— No, the thing wearing Sophia's face lunged for him, her claws sinking into his chest with a wet crunch. Maria didn't wait. She grabbed the fallen rifle and bolted for the stairs, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped animal, the sounds of tearing flesh and gurgling screams echoing behind her. She didn't look back. Couldn't. The bunker's upper level was in chaos, smoke filling the corridors, alarms wailing, and in the distance, the roar of approaching helicopters. They'd come to clean up their mess, to erase all evidence, including her. Maria burst through the exit just as the first explosion rocked the bunker, the force throwing her to the ground, heat searing her skin as the world dissolved into fire and noise. When she finally raised her head, coughing blood and ash, the bunker was a raging inferno, and standing at the tree line, untouched by the flames, was Sophia, watching, waiting. Her golden eyes locked onto Maria's as the helicopters circled overhead. Then, with a smile that would haunt Maria's nightmares for the rest of her life, Sophia turned and vanished into the forest, leaving behind only a single, bloodied dog tag dangling from a broken chain. Maria clutched it to her chest, the metal, burning her palm, the engraved numbers now seared into her skin like a brand. A warning. A promise. This wasn't over. Maria crawled through the smoldering underbrush, her lungs burning with every ragged breath, the weight of the dog tag pressing into her bleeding palm like a brand of guilt and grief. The forest around her pulsed with the rhythmic thud of helicopter blades, their searchlights carving through the smoke like accusing fingers, and she knew with chilling certainty that they weren't here to rescue survivors. They were here to erase them. The bunker's collapse had bought her minutes, maybe less, and as she dragged herself behind the rotting husk of a fallen oak, her body screaming in protest, she pressed the dog tag to her forehead like a prayer, the numbers etched into its surface now seared into her mind. 47, 223 degree N, 122.134 degree W. Not random digits, another location, another nightmare waiting to be uncovered. Somewhere in the distance, a twig snapped, followed by the static, crackled voice of a soldier calling in coordinates, and Maria's blood turned to ice. They were hunting her, just like they'd hunted Sophia. The realization crashed over her. This wasn't just a cover-up, it was a culling. Whatever they'd created in that bunker, whatever Sophia had become, it was loose now, and the only person left who knew the truth was a desperate mother with nothing left to lose. Clenching the dog tag in her fist, Maria forced herself to stand, her legs trembling, her vision swimming with exhaustion and pain. She had to move, had to get to those coordinates before they did. But as she turned, a hand clamped over her mouth, yanking her backward into the shadows. She thrashed, her scream, muffled by a leather-gloved palm until a familiar voice hissed in her ear. "Stop fighting, unless you want to die here." Javier. His face was streaked with soot and blood, his left arm hanging limp at his side, but his grip was iron. "They're everywhere," he breathed, releasing her just enough to point toward a rusted drainage, pipe half buried in the earth. "We have to go. Now." Maria hesitated, her gaze darting back toward the tree line where Sophia had vanished. Javier's expression darkened. "She's gone, Maria. Whatever that thing is, it's not your daughter anymore." The words were a knife to her heart, but the distant bark of orders and the crunch of boots on leaves left no room for argument. They crawled into the pipe, the stench of mildew and decay choking them as they slithered through the darkness, the sounds of pursuit fading behind them. For hours they moved in silence, emerging only when the forest gave way to a derelict highway, the asphalt cracked and strangled by weeds. Javier collapsed against a rusted guardrail, his breath coming in, wet, painful gasps. "They'll find us," he muttered, pressing a shaking hand to his wounded side. "They always do." Maria didn't answer. She was staring at the dog tag, the coordinates burning in her mind like a beacon. Somewhere, Sophia, or the thing that had taken her, was out there, and if there was even a shred of her daughter left, Maria would find her, even if it meant becoming a monster herself. The first drops of rain began to fall as she pulled Javier to his feet, their silhouettes merging with the storm as they vanished down the road, two ghosts chasing a truth that would destroy them both.
Subscribe and press the bell icon so that you never miss the amazing video.